young bride, still fresh 6 years after her death. Does her ghost stalk Mount Carmel Cemetery, trailing the scent of her wedding bouquet? Mysteries from the files of Arthur C. Clarke, scientist, writer and visionary. The scientist who invented the communications satellite, the writer of 2010, and now in retreat in Sri Lanka, the visionary who ponders the riddles of this and other worlds.
These are the ramparts of the great fort of Gaul, built by the Dutch in the 17th century to defend themselves against invaders from the sea. The place is steeped in atmosphere, and many of the locals swear that at sunset they've seen the spectral figure of a Dutch lady floating silently along these battlements. Like the citizens of Gaul, everyone loves a good ghost story. But to many people, they're more than mere fiction. According to a British survey, 1 person out of 10 claims to have encountered a ghost. But what have they really seen? The dead returning, or merely figments of their own imaginations?
This is the place where serious ghost hunters come in their quest for truth. The Windy City.
Come on, everybody, it's time to begin the tour. If you follow me, we'll board the bus right now. We're about to take the Chicago Supernatural Tour, and we'll be visiting the most haunted places on planet Earth here in the city of Chicago.
And among these concrete canyons, no one is more expert on the evidence than their guide, Richard T. Crowe.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chicago Supernatural Tour. The trip you're about to take this afternoon runs some 5 hours in length. We'll be traveling over 100 miles, visiting 13 locations around Chicagoland. Haunted cemeteries, murder sites, other weird locations where people like yourselves have experienced strange and unusual phenomena. We've got something for everybody on board the tour today. If you don't find a ghost that fits your particular needs, you might want to consider haunting a certain stretch of road when you leave this world. We'll bring our bus by and point you out on future tours. On our left is Resurrection Cemetery, the largest cemetery in North America. And it's best known here in Chicago as being the home of the best known, best loved, and most often encountered ghost, Resurrection Mary. She's been seen, for instance, by Jerry Palis, a Southwest Side man, who in 1939 danced with Resurrection Mary.
As we finished the dance that evening, we went to the car, and she says, "Since you got a car, take me to Archer Road." So as I took her to Archer Road, she said, "Stop, I want to get out." She says, "I want to go across the road." I says, "Well, that's a cemetery across the road." And she says, that I know. She says, "Let me out, please." And as she crossed the road and she approached the Resurrection gates, she dematerialized. So then I knew that she was a ghost. That's why her hand was cold, and her small of her back was cold at all times. And being an ex-funeral director and embalmer, I knew that she was something else than what I thought she was.
Then there was the case of Sean and Jerry Lape. In 1978, while driving past the cemetery, they suddenly saw a girl dressed in white run in front of the path of their car. The car struck the girl. There was no thud or bump, but she just disappeared as she ran towards the fence and dematerialized.
We're lifelong residents of the southwest side of Chicago, and we know the legend of Resurrection Mary. But no one expects to hit her late one night coming home from their mother-in-law's. I didn't feel anything. There was no bump, no jar, nothing. It wasn't like we hit a human.
Here in Mount Carmel Cemetery are the graves of many famous Italian Chicago businessmen. If you look out the window on your right, we're coming up to the grave of probably the most famous, Al Capone. Al was a mother's boy during life, and he lies buried next to his mother in death. After the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, Al was haunted by James Clarke, the first man to die in that massacre. It's said that Clarke's ghost haunted Al all the remaining years of his life. This life-size stone monument marks the resting place of Giulia Piccola-Petta. She's called the Italian Bride, that's how she's depicted in the monument, and she was buried in her wedding dress after she died in childbirth at the age of 29 in 1921. Now, sometime after Giulia's death and burial, her mother, Filomena Piccola, began to have a series of unusual dreams. In those dreams, Giulia came back and begged and pleaded with her mother to have the grave exhumed. Finally, when permission was given, 6 years had passed. It was now 1927. The grave was opened, the casket taken out of the ground, and when opened, it was found that Giulia's body was in perfect condition, just as the day she died. Now, that's interesting enough, but the spirit of Giulia has been seen walking through the cemetery at night and walking along the road just beyond us. There are people who claim that they've actually smelled a miraculous scent of roses, even though there are no roses present.
I used to work as a floral designer, and I know each color rose has a different scent, and these were definitely very sweet, small, like tea roses, baby roses. And I kept smelling, and I didn't say too much, and about 15 minutes later we were on the bus, and Mr. Crow said, "How many of you smell roses?" And there were about 4 or 5 of us that smelled the roses. And it was the middle of, beginning of November.
As we wrap up the Chicago Supernatural Tour today, I'd like to thank you all for coming along. I hope you've had an enjoyable day. No matter where you go, I want you always to remember to support your local ghosts.
Weir Lake, Ocklawaha, Florida. This lonely house was the site in 1935 of the